extraordinaire, the gemologist.
What a fantastic weekend. I participated in a weekend with good friends run by good friends, sponsored by, I would say, organized by good friends of Jackson Elias, all the people involved in that podcast. And that would be Matt Sanderson, Paul Fricker, and Scott Dorwood. And it's the first time I participated in this online con. There's I think a really cool aspect about it is that it is a lottery system to get into a game. There are a lot of cool people, including content creators that run games, are testing out their games, and the organizers felt it was not fair to have people sitting at midnight GMT ready to press the button to get in a game. So you have the GM submit their games. There's a list of games. You choose what games you want to be in and the priority, and boom, it goes into a hat, magic, 8-ball, whatever, and the games are populated based on this lottery system. So I submitted 2 games to a weekend with Jackson Elias. This time February ran from Friday the 18th to here Sunday the 20th. The first game I submitted was The Bone Collectors, a medieval pulp game set in the wake of the Battle of Towton on May 29th, 1461. I'm a big fan of the War of the Roses, probably what you would imagine Game of Thrones is based upon. I mean, you even have House Lancaster / Lannister. Anyway, so that was one game I proposed, something I've designed and thought about. And the other game that I ran was a game of Delta Green called Emergency Stent that really was inspired by my real life events, and both were very successful. I got really good feedback, which is what I wanted in these they're like outlines in my notebook type of games right now. And I hope to improve them, bring them to fruition, maybe get them on a convention circuit. Who knows, publication, that's the dream, that's the end goal. I'll get some content out there. Not that I would ever want to make money on this, but I don't know, it'd be kind of neat to do. Anyway, I also played in 3 games, and they were really fun. I got to play in a Down Dark Trails Call of Cthulhu game. I got to play in a Call of Cthulhu Modern game, and I got to play in a game that I never played before, which was a PDQ. I think it's Jewels of the Serpent. I think that's the Sword and Sorcery version of that, but run by Scott Dorwood, actually. It was really fun, a Sword and Sorcery game. And I'll talk about them today in this podcast. Thank you for joining me here at the Gemologist Presents. Thank you for listening. And sure, let's get into a weekend with good friends. So the first game I ran, I entitled The Bone Collectors. This was my medieval pulp game, and I'm going to talk about the design and some things that I felt came from the game. I don't want to give too much away because you never know. Even some of you listeners might get vetted to play test, because I would say it needs work, for sure. Nothing comes out perfect the first time you try to do it, and I would say that even as, in my scientific publications, you're all second guessing, you're always trying to improve. That goes for both manuscripts and grants, right? So it's the same approach I would take here to making a game adventure, for sure, right? It's the same type of iterative process that one would go through. So the setting is March 29th, 1461, the Battle of Towton. It is a Palm Sunday, very cold. It is snowing. The wind is blowing from the north. The wind is blowing from the south, and it is cold still. The wind is blowing. And I actually started adventure the day before because I wanted to run through this sort of what I'm calling the luck battle, a phase of the adventure where the players are participating in the Battle of Towton, and instead of going round by round, blow by blow, I had the battle, the events broken up into different segments, and players would roll a skill of their choice, and depending on the outcome, they would gain or lose luck or take some damage from just the fighting around them, getting involved in engagements, I was trying to promote that the players kind of came up with a narrative of what they were doing in this particular segment of the battle. And I think it went really well. Um, I did add I gave some choice to some of the characters, just depending on who they were. And just to back up slightly, I had made 3 characters. I talked about this in a previous podcast. 3 characters from the York side, 3 characters from the Lancaster side, a knight, noble, a man-at-arms, and a bowman. And I definitely have plans to add maybe non-martial characters just in case when you run it and someone doesn't want to play, a warrior type. There are definitely roles to be played for people who are maybe peripheral to the battle but still got caught up in it. For sure, clergy, people involved in the camp, including camp followers, the families of the participants of the battle, because in medieval times, especially during the War of Roses, the families would go because it's like you're uprooting their, in a way, one of their members of the family for a whole season, and this was actually a tactic to improve morale because you're fighting for your spouse and your children back at camp as well as for whatever cause you're a part of. So those are definitely possibilities. I definitely need to work on that and add to that as part of the adventure. So I had 5 players show up. 1 did not show up, but I went ahead and rolled with it. So the different outcomes would have been extreme success, hard success, success, failure, and fumble, as determined by sort of the Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. Those are the different tiers of success. So what I learned, a couple things, and I got some feedback. What I learned, just self-evaluation, is by the end of the luck battle, the characters were kind of beat up. So I definitely need to take down the amount of damage they take a notch, I think. And what I ended up doing is giving them sort of 6 points back. Kind of narratively, in my mind, there'd be during downtime, first aid, taking a breath, a rest, bandaging their wounds, etc. But I definitely need to take that down a notch. And then another thing is, while one character was able to see something strange during the battle, a player suggested, well, throw some strangeness on the battlefield. Everyone knows something weird's going to happen. It's Call of Cthulhu. You have this Call of Cthulhu convention, but what if it's people have never played, right? So, definitely, I think they gave me some ideas on how I could do that. Throw some strange things into the battle that give an element of the supernatural or the occult or the mythos, right? So I thought that phase went really well, and one player did say, I'm going to take that and use that in my games when I want a big thing going on in the backdrop of my adventure. So yeah, have at it. It's awesome. My inspiration is kind of from Pendragon, the way they run battles and do battle system in Pendragon. And I kind of use this idea when I ran my Cthulhu Invictus game, Various' Folly / The Last Eagle, way back a couple of years ago for some of you maybe. I know that Colin Green was in it. Jason Connolly participated in that as well. So and so did Darren Green. As you know him as Arfed on the Discords. So I took inspiration from that, tweaked it a bit, gave some actual outcome from this part 1 of the adventure. So the next part went into like the first encounter with the mythos, and I thought that went very well. I believe the adventure, what I will do is, so you could have like 4 to 6 player characters would be great. And then you can scale the number of mythos that you encounter, or denizens of the mythos, creatures of the mythos you encounter in the next phases based on the number of players. So I have that already in mind and jotted down some notes. But I think the pulp heroes can encounter a lot. And something I did pull in from other Call of Cthulhu's, from Call of Cthulhu Invictus and Call of Cthulhu Dark Ages, is the use of armor and armor mitigation. And that, I think, was well done. The players really enjoyed it. It made them kind of a bit more bold, which you want action in a pulp game, right? So they're a bit more bold. They're not timid. The armor protects as it should. I had different tiers of armor. I had, what the knights wore, full plate armor. I had plate mail, like what the men at arms would wear, like either brigadine or scale or ring, what they would have, and then sort of the lighter armor with a little buckler that the archers would wear. So it was pretty cool. The armor mitigated as it did, and it was swingy, which is what you want. Sometimes even with a plate mail wear, you're going to get a stab in or a rip in through the length, in between the plates, and sometimes the plate's going to totally protect you, which was really neat. So it definitely, their ingenuity really held the day in this first encounter with the mythos, and then subsequently, I also kind of designed intentionally certain clues that they were going to find in this part and then the next part where they found, the quote unquote lair. And there are some little tidbits that they did not find in the adventure, which was okay because they weren't, key clues. So I kind of took this idea from Trail of Cthulhu, and and Delta Green in a way too, that made the clues obvious enough to give a bonus so that will for sure make it, or put several clues there that they can, kind of find, so that they know how to get to the next phase instead of the issue with Call of Cthulhu. A lot of times a complaint is, well, we can never get our libraries, we never get our spot hidden, we don't find the clues. I think you want to make it so that they find the clue to get to the next phase. And you have other things that could give color but are not key clues. So I had those too. So while the players didn't find everything out, they found out what they needed to find to proceed to the next phase. So in the second phase, they went really well. And I thought something that was innovative is that they were able to turn the bad guys' weapons against them. I thought that was really cool. So some of the obscure talents that you think wouldn't work, I think got to get put into play. And I really like how the players did that. Looked at their character sheets, examined them, kind of exploited their talents, I think, properly. And then another thing that happened later is that when they were looking at the background of their character, they really played up on, man, I want to make sure that, my treasured possession is put into play. What does this do? Here's my background. I want to put that into play. So I think that really worked well. And in the concluding part, I had how to stop, the big bad in several ways. And I think that was important. And I think the only thing that happened that was maybe I need to think about a little bit is I feel like the big bad was revealed a little early, and I have to figure out the mechanic for that. I based it on luck, but by that time, in Pulp Cthulhu, luck is a big thing, and you expend it to mitigate damage, you expend it to make your rolls, you expend it to mitigate sanity. So their luck was low, and the mechanic I had in mind was based on luck for the big reveal. And I think the big reveal, I felt the players loved it. There was exclamations, but for me, it was a little early. And I had it multiple ways that the players could solve the puzzle, solve the adventure, and they did it in a way that I thought was kind of neat. Really, it took a little doing. One player had a good idea, but it wasn't for me the right idea, and sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's okay. I had a full-on action idea to solve the problem, and then a more intellectual. And in this case, it was the intellectual way. And I think that's probably a good balance, is that you have multiple ways. We had some neat moments where someone went not only temporarily insane, but now indefinitely insane, which is what you want, I think, to happen in Call of Cthulhu, at least according to the designers that I talked to this weekend. So that's always a check mark on your keeper box that you have people go indefinitely insane and near death. And no one died. No one went like totally like I have to run away and flee. One character did see the writing on the wall and took off, and that prompted the other characters in their epilogue to like, we got to track this guy down because this information needs to be hidden and suppressed. Some players were taken. I mean, so in Pulp, and like in Call of Cthulhu, Pulp heroes have 20 to 40 hit points, and a couple of these big bads, a couple of the big bad player characters, not the big bad monsters, but a couple of the big bad player characters were down to like a handful of hit points. I think that was very satisfactory, and they had to use as much as meta currency as possible, the luck that you know. Well, if you know Pulp Cthulhu, you know you can use luck for a lot of things, and they really used it for their talents, for mitigating damage, for making skill rolls, for helping with sanity. So yeah, I thought it was very satisfying. And again, like I said, I got good feedback. I had fantastic players. I will say, amazingly, my buddy Joe Salvatore, Raven God Games, got into the game, so that really helped kind of tone down my nervousness, because you kind of have a friend that's there, so it's not going to judge you as harshly, or maybe more harshly, but give you good feedback. That's what's important. So that was pretty neat, and that was the Bone Collectors coming to a convention near you, perhaps. Well, I think in my mind it's easiest to go chronologically. So the next game I played in is Pilgrim's Hope. I'm not going to talk about that much except to give you the setup and impressions, because it is a published adventure. It's actually a really good buy and deal on DriveThruRPG. I myself, prompted by playing this adventure, am going to go buy it. It seems really neat. I love the setup. Here's the setup. It's a down dark trails, so Western, and the players are part of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. So if that doesn't grab you there, well, I guess you don't like Westerns. So I thought it was a really cool setup. We get to do things as performers, which really pulls you into the setup and gets you in the mood. Then there's a problem, and then it becomes very investigative. I think what kind of bothered me too, and it's a comment I had in Bone Collectors, and something that I will strive to do in design, is it is kind of in a way base Call of Cthulhu. And yes, you have luck, and people do use it in a one shot, which is cool. But it definitely, the clues to find are predicated on spot hidden, or if you're trying to engage with NPCs, then it's like charm, persuade, and if you don't get those, then you don't get the clue. And I know that's part and parcel for Call of Cthulhu, but it's not my favorite part of Call of Cthulhu, and I definitely know that it can frustrate players. And then they end up doing something that might irritate the GM. Honestly, that did not happen in this game. Yes, there were seemed to be a lot of clues that maybe we didn't find, but there were enough to pick up on that it didn't get to that point. But I would say that it was a lot of searching, which is not a bad thing, and some luck, really, and some prompting by the GM with idea rolls to get to where we needed to go. And maybe that's okay. I liked it so that you did have interactions with NPCs, big monster, check. One thing I definitely will do if I run this game, and I don't think this is a spoiler per se, but is to really understand how the chase rules work. They seem to be a heavy part of this, both early and later on. And yeah, I think it was a very satisfying conclusion, and enjoyed the group that I played with. And like I said, I was tickled enough by the experience that I'm going to go out and buy a Pilgrim's Hope. So like I said, you can find it on DriveThru, and I like down dark trails, westerns, and the Old West, and running games or playing them is a cool thing for me. So very enjoyable experience to play that. And yeah, I got to play. Oh, I'll just say who I got to play. I got to play a performer named Jose Luis Hernandez. His horse was hella awesome, though it did bail on me in the end. But he had really cool skills like some tracking, some stealth, as well as a performance skills. Good with the knife, not so good with the gun. But hey, that's why we had Annie Oakley in the party, right? So neat experience, and like I said, I'm going to get the adventure. After Pilgrim's Hope, I had scheduled a session of my TCC Fantasy ongoing game, Echoes from Fomalhaut, but it did not meet this weekend. I was ready to run something or do something, but a couple players were out, so the players that were there, what we decided to do was to just quickly make some characters for Weird Frontiers, which is a DCC Weird West game created by Dave Beatty, who is a super cool dude. If you ever meet him at a convention, loves his game, loves to game, and very approachable. So what I had the players do, I didn't really want to do a funnel necessarily, because the game I have in mind, or the series of games I have in mind, would take place in New Mexico. I called it, I think, Down Dark New Mexico Trails. And because the actually Weird Frontiers, the original title of the game was Dark Trails, and other reasons, Chaosium. And well, I just had to make like almost 3 arrays. They rolled 3 times, and then chose the best array from that array. Then they determined the occupation, etc. And then after they did that, then they chose a actual class. And I had one player, Arlen Walker of Live from Pelham's Wasteland. He chose to play a gambler. His stats really worked out with that. He had a really good luck score. It seemed to be what gamblers hinge on, or their most important stat. The other player ended up having a really good strength and not so much good stats in the other attributes. So he decided to make a luchador, which is cool because I love luchadors and I like playing them. I need to find like a luchador role-playing game, honestly, and maybe Weird Frontiers, if we get to the table, will satisfy that itch. So that's kind of what we did. Then we kind of talked for a while, and then I moved on to my next game. But I should note here that my character did go indefinitely insane. Not only did I have a bout of madness, but he went indefinitely insane in the Pilgrim's Hope game. I was hoping to recapitulate that later on when I played other Call of Cthulhu games, because that's the fun part, right? Go insane. I don't know. That's my opinion. You want to take action. You do want to. You have survival. You want to survive, but it's not a bad thing if you go insane in Call of Cthulhu, because that's part and parcel. And I guess keepers like to tick that checkbox to make sure that they have players at least go insane. Maybe. So anyway, on to the next thing. That is sort of a little interlude about what I did from 8 to noon or so before my next game. So next on the schedule was me back up as keeper / handler again. I ran a Delta Green adventure that I'm working on and developing called Emergency Stent. And this adventure is really inspired by events in my life that have happened. And it's kind of a homage to some of my family members and to things that have happened. If it ever gets to publication, it would be like a pay what you want donation to some charity, likely dealing with advocacy for cancer patients. So the scene starts out And there's what I had put in place before was there are two sort of rival conspiracies in Delta Green, and I roll randomly to determine which one. What was cool is it turned out that this was a different. I run this before at a local con online, and what was cool this time is that I got the other faction. So the players meet at like a nice facility, and they see this. They're called from various reasons. I thought something very cool with this group of players is they really before the game they really asked questions, contacted me, developed. I had some pre-generated NPCs, but there was things that were left blank. For example, gender, background, your situation with bonds. If you've had like a Mythos encounter before, what was it? Um, so the players really dove into this, and it really helped me, and it's definitely helping the design of the adventure as a whole because they came up with some neat things that I asked permission to incorporate maybe in a potential final product. So I thought that was very cool. I let the players who kind of did this talk about it and why they are there. Um, I love what some of the players came up with. Um, like one player came up with, well, I just got a text message that said San Antonio, so my character's been hanging out in San Antonio for the last, month or so. So I thought that was cool. I also did set this adventure in San Antonio. I live in San Antonio, Texas. This place is totally familiar to me, so I can throw in a lot of like, even in the a written product, and not just running it, but throw in a lot of things that I know about San Antonio, so it'll be, at least in my mind, accurate and give to me some verisimilitude, and hopefully that can be um, communicated to the players. So I did have the benefit also of having one of the players be a medical professional. This adventure relies on some medical terminology and some deduction from a medical point of view. So this player is definitely willing to stick around as this potential adventure develops and give me, a pass, or let me send him a draft and he'll edit it so that it sounds so it becomes as accurate as possible in a fictional mythos laden game, right? But I thought that was kind of neat. So I feel like that really helped me, bolstered my confidence in running it. The adventure starts with a surgery scene that goes wrong, and the players are then, and there's a video of it through, taken from a phone, and the player's job is to find out what the hell happened and suppress leakage of this video. The people they work for are on it, but it's not been super successful, and they're given a list of people that were in this operating theater and contact information for the decedent and their family, and then the players took off, and I got some good feedback on how the investigation went. They felt there were plenty of leads, probably some, not necessarily too many, but they felt like it was the right amount of leads to both, because you don't want to give them like an easy path to where they have to go. And they felt that it was enough leads to make it interesting, but not enough leads to make it overwhelming. So I think I got the right amount of leads that they can follow. And I thought what was cool is they followed a different path than the last time it ran, which to me makes for replayability, that you can go in different directions. I did have at one point, because of their decisions they made and where they went, that the rival faction showed up, and one player said that was hella awesome. He loved really getting into that. I made it as cryptic as possible, but they really enjoyed that part, and it gave the Marshall character, who maybe wasn't totally involved in the investigative part, a chance to shine early on. So I thought that was really good, and depending on which way they go, I think that's a good idea to have that kind of like, hey, give the Marshall guy. The pre-gens that were there were two that had, that actually had weapons, right? So other than their fists or whatever they could pick up. So that's probably a good idea to keep those players engaged, to, depending on which way they go, to have some sort of like action or potential action bit. Now, I think it was smart of them not to get into a firefight in the middle of the medical center in San Antonio, Texas. So they did a great job there, and they did enough on the back end too, to really put the rival group on ice for the remainder of the adventure. I thought that was brilliant. So those are possibilities that I'm thinking about, and how you would kind of neutralize your rival faction, or any rival party, whether um, it could be a rival faction in the conspiracy, or it could be, you know, a potential cult, right? So there are those two possibilities. I think I gave enough clues and information to keep the characters engaged, and I think again, what I like about Delta Green, there is this sort of idea that you don't have to always be rolling if the characters are experts on a particular subject. So if you have a computer operator who just wants to go look for information, they're going to be very adept at finding information on the World Wide Web. I don't have to roll for it. I mean, and honestly, maybe it's even less arduous. I mean, I put it in the modern day. People have access to phones. You have access to whatever you have. So you can Google a lot of information, and there's a lot of information that is public, in my mind at least. And if they want to dig deep and get some more private information, or like hack into the university, sure, then you'll have to roll. But just to find basic publicly accessed information, not a big deal. So I think the guy who played the computer guy really was savvy about this and was really cool with the rulings that were made during the game. There was a player who took up the physician character, and they really shined as well. I think they really embraced the character and all the different traits that the character had. It was really great role playing there. And I think one comment that got brought up is that there was a character who had some astronomy chops, and I really didn't dig into that. And I think that's something, if I'm going to use that pre-gen, I really need to, I think you want the player's expertise to shine. So like the archaeologist definitely got a lot of kind of archaeologist slash almost psychoanalyst, got a lot of chances to shine, and really took a lead in a lot of the investigation. I think the one who was an astronomer was correct in that I really need to get that player involved. So if I'm putting that pre-gen as an option, then why have it unless I'm going to let them shine with their expertise? Why would the conspiracy, whatever faction of the conspiracy, bring them together unless they're going to be used? So I kind of need to dig a little deeper into that. That was, I think, a very valid criticism and will help me with it for future design. I thought the pacing was really well. I got props on pacing, and the finale was very satisfying. It was action. It was tense. Some characters could have gotten really seriously hurt, and the adversary was tough enough to challenge this group of characters, even a guy with an MP5 SDSS. So I thought it was very satisfying. I'm getting some continued feedback as well. So yeah, I thought it went really well, and this has been a very good con, I think, for me. Very much helped my confidence in adventure design. So definitely, hopefully, if I can bring some of these to the table for you, my listeners, or others, I really would like to run at least the Medieval Pulp, if not the Delta Green, on a live convention. Live conventions that are coming up. Both I'm going to ChupacabraCon for sure. I'm probably going to go to North Texas. Although North Texas, really delves more into like old school games, so maybe I'll come up with like a BX game. That'd be kind of neat to do. I definitely have lots of ideas for that, or even a Hyperborea game, because I know that is popular at that con as well. So yeah, so that was Delta Green Emergency Stent. The other compliment I got was on the NPCs. The NPCs that they interviewed were unique, had their own quirks, weren't stereotypical. I think I really had fun with it. There's a neat scene where they kind of arrest a poor medical student. So that was really fun for me, playing that poor medical student, and I think fun for the characters, especially when the medical student recognized, someone whose papers and documents that they've read, and the doctor that played in the game, or the doctor PC that was in the game. So it was really fun. We had a good time with it. So that's it. That's Delta Green Emergency Stent, sort of a debrief, sit rep report post game for you all. thus do we go on to the next game report, and this will also be spoiler free. The game I played in was a modern Call of Cthulhu game called VRBO Vacation, and I'm gonna be a spoiler free recap because while this adventure hasn't been published, both the keeper and another person are trying have run it at conventions. They've the author loaned the pre-gens to the keeper that ran, and they may be considering releasing it as a published version at some point on drive-through through Miskatonic University Press, the sort of fan-based publications. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Both the adventure is taken from heavy inspiration from something I can mention, which is from the original Brockford House scenario from an older Call of Cthulhu edition. So I have not played that adventure, so I don't know. Maybe some of you might know. That would be the only spoiler here. So the setup is we're a bunch of people. He did kind of make it contemporary. It is modern, but modern like 2021, not 1990s. So, we are a bunch of 20-somethings who are friends, have been friends for a long time, and we finally, because of COVID, are going to get out on a vacation, a weekend out up into in Wisconsin, in the Lake Superior, I think on the edge of someplace on Lake Superior. So I played Quincy, who was a nurse, and I really had a good time with this character. Yes, I was 2 for 2. I did have bouts of madness, and I think I'm going to talk about the bouts of madness because that was a fun part. When we get into it, we do investigation. There's some creepy things going on in the house, and things sort of build up. And I thought the adventure is really neat, and I can't wait till it comes out because I would definitely get it. I love the pacing and the build up and the scary things on the edge of your vision that you don't know what the hell is going on. It's just, because we're renting this haunted house. That's the setup. And hey, are these actors or what? So I think that was a cool vibe throughout the whole thing. We find some weird books, which is also neat. So Quincy kind of at some point goes crazy, and my bouts of madness were kind of fun. I got a mania for numbers, so I started like scrawling out numbers everywhere with chicken bones or pens or a knife everywhere in the house, which was kind of fun. And the other bout of madness I had is I became, in a way, very precise and was manic about that I had the best plan and I was the smartest person around. So then I kind of took that and ran with it, and I basically became Mayhem from the Allstate commercials, just kind of talking and narrating exactly what I was doing, because that was the best course of action, and that was pretty fun too. Ended up, hurting my shoulder on the side of a car, rolling around on the ground with an adversary. So it was really fun. We did escape. I think because I thought what was really neat, good dynamic that came out in this game with the players is we really talked to each other. So I think that's very important in a game where you don't know a lot of the other players, and we talked to each other about decision making and what decisions we would make in character. And I think we came to a decision of the majority, and I think everyone agreed, since we were all friends and we've been through the shit before, that hey, we're gonna get through this together. And I thought that was really neat. So that was, to me, was the cool thing about that adventure. So buying into this adventure, hopefully you'd have players that would want to do that remember that you guys are all friends and been friends for a while. So it was definitely fun, a great group of players, and I have not been disappointed with both the quality of players during this convention and the quality of the games offered and how the GMs presented them. I think this has been a really good experience. So that is VRBO Vacation, a modern Call of Cthulhu scenario. Carry on, my wayward son. There'll be peace when you are done. Lay your weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more. One little correction. The game that I played that is the Sword and Sorcery PDQ game is Jaws of the Six Serpents. And you can find it on DriveThru, which is cool. The last game I played was run by Scott Dorward, author of many Call of Cthulhu scenarios, including the Two Serpents Pulp Cthulhu scenario. And I thought it was kind of cool. I got to share, they were kind of talking about Scott Dorward and his kind of craziness and difficulty in the scenarios he makes. And I got to say, well, Scott, you got another technical death because I recently played in Two Serpents. And yeah, I had to use my luck to survive. And he goes, oh, out of curiosity, where did your character's demise happen? And I said, Iceland. And everyone laughed. And he says, yes, it's always in Iceland. So that's kind of a little anecdote for you. Maybe not such a spoiler, maybe it is. But yeah, it's a cool group of players. Had a great time. Got out of my comfort zone in playing my character for sure. And this was the Ragged Army. So the Ragged Army is a sword and sorcery scenario that takes place in the walled city of Arrakeen in the land of Sartane. It's similar to a Hyperborean Age of Conan. Sartane would be like Aquilonia, but not worry. Think about early medieval France, maybe some of the Clark Ashton Smith stuff. The city is a wealthy trading center, but it does have a dark underbelly. We are people that have fallen through the cracks of society. We were once wealthy. We have lived in the shadows. Either way, we have to resort to dangerous, dubious, or outright criminal means to survive. And as we open, the city is under siege from a barbarian horde. There have been no supplies coming to the city, and the social order is beginning to break down. So this gives us an opportunity. And we have Braden the Blizzard, once a barbarian warlord, now old and weak from disease and age. Kargash the Undying, a drunken sorcerer, says he was the greatest of all time. Mother Lavelle, she is a mother to all the city's lost children. Knows, kind of imagine, I would say, how I imagine like a Fagin type character from Oliver Twist. She keeps the children safe and warm in the dangerous and cold world. Of course, in return, they bring secrets and valuables that come their way. I played Verome the Sleek. He was the eldest son of the Count Salik. I should have been next in line to rule should my father die, but instead, my libertine tendencies have led me to be disinherited and sent penniless into the streets. I earn my way selling my body and on occasion blackmailing my clients. So I am a male gender bisexual prostitute in this game. And finally, we have the voice of Arrakeen, former anarchist firebrand and revolutionary who's broken from past run-ins with the law, broken by torture. Does she have one last bit of fire in her? And I would say, yes, we did. We had such a great time. It was using the PDQ system, which seems to be like a Fate-like system for Sword and Sorcery. It uses Jaws of the Serpent as the rule set. And I've run Fate game once, and it was great to sit there and learn some more Fate and how it works. And I really enjoyed it, what we did. And actually, I mean, I did comment on to Scott that we have some pretty powerful characters in their respective niches. I mean, we were able to do some very cool things in this game. I'm not going to go into all the details because I'm likely it might be coming out and published, but we were able to save our bar from being ransacked by the city guard. We caused a riot to prevent the unnecessary execution of thieves, including a lot of Mother Lavelle's wards, children from the city. We did a great job there. I personally got to use one of my meta currencies. You have 3 fortune, one of which is you can add in a minor detail about the world, and Scott was cool with me having the executioner, the man in charge of this setup in the market, as my lover. And we were actually able to recruit this executioner, a man named Gaucher, to our side. So I thought that was kind of fun and cool. We turned the riot to storm the nobles' quarter and the palace, and a combination of myself and Mother Lavelle knowing secrets and the highways and byways of the city, we remembered or we found the secret passages into the castle and stormed it. I definitely feel at a game like this, it's very narrative, and depending on the GM, um, I don't know. I don't know how. Maybe you guys can answer. In a game like this, where there's a lot of narrative, I guess it really is up to the GM whether your zany ideas will work or not. And I guess you got to give a good argument to see what qualities you can put into play. So qualities are rated from +4 down to -2 for negative qualities, and what qualities come into play. And then you roll the dice, and then there's a chart which can tell you the outcome. So, we I would say Scott was generous with what talents and qualities we could bring to bear, and the die rolls in general were in our favor. Although I think most of us used at least 2 of our 3 fortune. There's 1 fortune where you can get a reroll at a d6 plus the result of your previous die, which really helps. And I know I used that while we were in the palace to avoid severe injury when I was trying to have some guards stand down. So some cool things did happen. I think is that the voice of Arakeen were able to confront their old torturer, a la "You killed my father, prepare to die" from Princess Bride. I thought that was a very neat fight where Mother Lavelle and voice of Arakeen took down the torturer through their combined actions. We prevented my father, the Count, from escaping the palace. Mother Lavelle and I, knowing the secret passages in the palace, definitely helped with that. And then finally, not with any sorcery, but with some thieving skills, Kargash the Undying broke into the Count's room, and we confronted my father. And my plan was to put Braden on the throne. Verome is one of those who would rather lead or be in charge from the shadows, much like the voice, much like Mother Lavelle. Although maybe the voice is a bit more active. Anyway, Braden and the Count got into a scuffle, and actually the Count did really well against the old barbarian, and it was, again, Kargash the Undying who smacked him on the head, and we captured him. There were some taunts back and forth, and finally Kargash woke up, and through various machinations and manipulations, while Verome and the voice of Arakeen stood on the battlements, and Mother Lavelle at the palace watching from a balcony with her children, saw Kargash the Undying and Braden the Blizzard go out and confront the barbarian horde. Braden's character had a great one-on-one fight with his son who had deposed him and left him for dead. That was really cool. And Kargash summoned hell to destroy the barbarian horde. So yeah, it was crazy, over-the-top sword and sorcery, but I really liked the rule set. And again, I think you have to have I don't know, generous is a word that comes to mind. Perhaps that is not the case, but your mileage may vary on whether as a GM you would allow such shenanigans. But if you have a logical and compelling argument and you have the qualities with which to do these things, sure, go for it. And sometimes we didn't have the qualities, and sometimes we had negatives, but we were, again, rolling pretty well. We rolled like on the dice spot or physical dice, and it was very cool. I mean, I think again everyone used their fortune points, so we used our meta currencies like as you want. You want that to happen to do the over the top things. I think for the over the top things to succeed. But we saved the city, and Arakeen lives another day instead of being overrun by the barbarian horde. So I thought that was pretty cool. It was a really fun session. I think a lot of equal participation. I think something else that Scott did very well is give everyone some camera time to do things, which really helped. And there really wasn't a lot of that over talking. People were very respectful, very open to the crazy ideas that we all had. It's a pretty cool, very fun game. I mean, again, like Pilgrim's Hope, and looking forward to VRBO Vacation. I look forward to seeing this game in print, and for sure getting Jaws of the Serpent. I mean, maybe I know we're run a lot of sword and sorcery type games, including the Reaver playtest that I'm a part of. But this seems to be a really neat rule set, and it could really work. And I know, if, like, for example, I do have some players, for example, my wife Amy, who loves a more narrative style, so that would appeal to them more than like a crunchy, a D&D style type of game, in my opinion. So yeah, it was pretty cool. I had a great time. And sure, I think we've gone close. I've gone over, but I want to give you guys some feedback, and especially, share with you some of my design ideas and the feedback I got on that. So yeah, let's conclude this one. So TJ Drennan does the intro and outro music, and Amy Rodriguez does the cover art for the GMologist podcast. Thank you for listening, and you can contact me, leave a message on Anchor, tell me what you think about my weekend with good friends. You can also send me an email as well with audio file. If you want me to play it, I will. And without further ado, let's see here that outro, which is very cool, that Jam and Outro by TJ Drennan.